是不是具备这种网状化的思维，然后连接了军中或者是民间的相关的这个思维然后制定出一个完整的国防安全的战略。那我在这个文章的这个最后，我会附一张表就是不同思维产生不同方式的防卫战略这个只是假想中共军事威胁有哪些。那传统的思维你会怎么做？但是逆向思维你应该怎么做？立体思维你要怎么做？非对称思维应该怎么办？网状化思维应该怎么做完全是我自己个人的看法了这个并不代表官方或者是学校或者是国防大学以上是我简单的报告，谢谢。
谢谢沈教授。刚才的一席话，越无部没有打过败仗的军人说过一句话：变化之妙，存乎一心。最重要的是观念、思维，次还在其次，尤其次多了，人容易搞混。有一位专家说过 ，There are 1,000 definitions of strategy. So when you have more words, people get more confused. The important thing is to have a very clear concept. Now, the floor is open for Q&A. 现在开放给大家问问题，请介绍您自己，而且指明要问哪一位学者，请举手。这位，其他人也可以举手，我会在这边排队，请。
Hi, so my name is Keach, and this is a two-part question. The first part I would like to direct the question at Colonel Tan. And so you mentioned like the lack of, the lack of a strategic policy in terms of Taiwan. And I was wondering, in the lower echelon of things, there's a lack of disclosure when it comes to operational doctrine and scenarios. And we can surely understand that if we were actually doing the exercise at the time. But I've been told, like for example, like the Hong Kong exercise, during actual exercise when they encounter problems or if the scenario does not go as planned, they basically just hold the entire exercise, reset it, and just redo things until you get it right. But that's kind of ridiculous, and that's not how people do it because there's a key performance indicator there they have to achieve. This is actually contrary to what red flags what they do for the United States Air Force. So I was wondering if there's a legitimate reason for not disclosing this information in the public sphere. As it were, to encourage more discussions. And the second part of the question would be directed to Michael Cole here. And do you think because you mentioned something about basically the escalation in espionage over the years, and during the Carnegie Conference in 2013, where they got the Deputy Secretary for Asian Affairs from the State Department to explain the pivot to Asia, the entire focus of the conference was basically on the lack of a confidence-building measure for the military between across the street. So I was wondering if you think this has anything to do with the fact that there's an escalation in espionage activities across the street. Thank you.
So, PG. I'm really sorry, but I consider that's an honor you call me a colonel because I heard colonel. I thought the question was addressing to my colleague. In Navy, it's called captain. Yeah, the 06 level officers. And if I understand your question, you're talking about releasing the information of the result of the Hanwha exercise.
Sorry, to clarify my question. I was talking about, for example, there will be operational doctrines for any force in a given situation, and also there will be scenarios, hypothetical scenarios, first-case scenarios, how everybody would act during the first 7 days or so, and not only the results of the Hanwha exercise, but the fact that why did we choose this scenario, and what did we do during the actual exercise, and not just like whether we can accomplish the goal or not. But how we do it. What's the entire what's the process of achieving
that? Have you heard or see anything like what you said in the U.S. Armed Forces or British Armed Forces or Japanese Armed Forces? I haven't. So that's the reason. All the military exercise they have to keep it to themselves. I mean, there will be internal debate, discussion, after action review, all those kind of things. There's a whole system. Yeah. So don't worry too much about it. We are learning gradually, probably not that fast, but in moving progress. So that's the whole system. But I have to emphasize that what we've been advised by the U.S. armed forces, like we are buying real estate, only 3 principles: location, location, locations. For military, training, training, training. Training to the death. Training the way you fight. So my perspective regarding the training and the military exercise is how, when, and how can we reach the level that all the military exercise, no matter it's threat-based or capability-based or scenario-based, that can be, as realistic as possible. That's also the U.S. Armed Forces advised to us. They do the exercise the way you fight. Do the exercise, do the training as much as you can to be more realistic. That's what you prepare for the future potential armed conflict. That's the way we're doing it. But to releasing the lesson learned, you have to join the armed forces. I'm encouraging you because we need people like you with this enthusiasm on the national defense affairs and participate. You will learn and you will get to know what you want to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Michael Cole.
Very briefly on your first question, you don't want to focus too much on Hangguang either. Hangguang is an exercise in publicity mostly. Where the real exercises happen are the joint tri-service exercises that happen all the time. And those really do not get publicity, but this is where the actual scenarios are played out and lessons are learned. Hangguang is you blow things up, you blow fish in the sea and then you take photo ops, right? Partly. Now, to answer your question, I assume you're talking about Kurt Campbell's remarks. Yeah. Whether lack of confidence building mechanism or measures in the Taiwan Strait is linked to increasing espionage, I certainly cannot speak on behalf of Taiwan's MND. I'm certainly not privy to all the classified information that they have. If I were, it would be a problem. I'm a journalist. But personally, I would say that this certainly would be a problem that plays into Taiwan's, the calculations on Taiwan's side and whether it's advisable to engage in CBM at this point. But it is mostly, in my view, a political problem that is exacerbated by the intelligence issues and considerations. It could also be that other countries like Japan and the United States would be rather nervous. I mean, at one level they encourage Taiwan to do that. At the other level, they're like, yeah, but don't go too far. And you need to take the initiative in those measures rather than be reactive like the way this administration has been in the past 7 years or so. If you're more proactive and you actually set the parameters, then you can probably better protect yourself against the nefarious consequences of engaging in CBM, because of course it opens the door to other angles by which the Chinese intelligence can collect information. But then again, the Chinese are now invited to the impact. So this is risk management when you do these things, and I sense that right now it's a political problem more than just intelligence issues.
Let me add, confidence building measures across Taiwan Straits has had two phases. Phase one, during Lee Teng-hui's time, it was actually, I'm sorry to use the word, imposed on us by the State Department. We had to do it. Phase two is current. Now we see the strong initiatives, proactive pursuits of PLA, but we in Taiwan are passive because we know the danger, we know the pitfalls. Thank you. Now I've seen a hand raised by Professor Liu Rongsheng.
First, I want to thank all your panelists for their excellent presentation. And also I want to comment on Michael Cole, make a very critical point that it's really the people. Sometimes the major enemy is not your enemy, say China, it's yourself, it's ourselves. We are the major enemy. I also tend to agree with Michael's assessment that it is not to the best interest to China by take over or win over Taliban with forces. I think that's probably correct assessment. I think then, so this is, if we all agree this assessment, it is not the best interest for China to take over Taiwan by forces. Now then, let's ask, what happened to people here? We keep hearing, all we're doing here is for the future young people. They are here about 80% young people. The last year, Sunflower Movement, 太阳花运动, I get the opportunity to have close engagement, conversation with young people. And I think one thing I learned, young people share different values. And young people force has to be taken into account. So the question is, have we ever asked our young people, are you willing to fight with your life? Are you willing to fight? Even, I believe, if we do a poll, nobody like communists. Nobody, we all love freedom. We all like, but the question is, are you willing to fight with your life with China? Shall we ask that question seriously? And this also addressed to a comment that Professor Yu made. The first priority is prevention of war. And it reminds me one of the very famous statements made by a UK philosopher, Bacon Russell, Rosu. Rosu had a very famous article called Rather Red Than Die. Rather, 我宁可被刺发，我不愿意死亡. Although that paper was written, there's a background. The background at that time was there was a severe Cold War between USA and Russia. 俄国跟苏俄. And at that time, Russia just passed a first hydrogen bomb, 氢弹. It is so powerful, it's going to wipe out all the human race. So when the journal he was interviewed, 贝根罗素是一个非常有名的哲学家跟 peace lover. So when he was asked a question, Mr. Russell, would you enter the war with Russia, or rather would you peacefully live with communists, even you have to under the communist control? And his answer was rather red than die, because the ultimate doctrine of human is peace. We don't want to kill any life. So my question is, would you do a poll as our young people? They have a totally different values. What they want to do? That's my question.
Thank you.
Well, I'm certainly not a young Taiwanese. I can't really answer that question. But I think, well, first of all, I think the Sunflower Movement and all the other movements that emerged in years prior have made it clear that young Taiwanese are willing to put their lives at risk to a point. I mean, we have 119 young people right now who potentially face years in jail for their actions at Li Faoyan and Executive Yuan. They knew full well what the consequences of their actions would be, and they did not stay home and play video games or focus on their studies. Lei Fei-fan and Chen Wei-ping will have to wait graduation because they were busy waging their own little war, right? On the military side, I think it's very, very important for young people to know that if they do decide to join, A, there is a clear mission, as was said earlier, and B, that they need to know that they're not signing for a suicide mission. They need to know that they will have the proper equipment, the proper training, and the proper backing, both from people in politics and the public. If right now their perception is that it's a bunch of bunglers, pardon the term, in the armed forces, young people will not join because they're going to be like, I'm going to die. My whole plane is going to crash, or if the PLA invades, I won't even know what to do with my guns. So, but ultimately, I'm convinced that Taiwanese are no different from anyone else on the face of the planet. If your nation and way of life is threatened, they will rally around the flag. young people all over the world do that. I don't see why the Taiwanese would be any different.
Thank you. Any other? You have something to say?
Regarding that question, should we ask our young people to want to fight against Chinese aggression to death? I don't think we should ask that kind of question. What we need is a strong political leader, strong military leader, and persuade the young people when the time comes, you have to make sacrifice to protect your homeland. Well, I think that's what we need. So that's why we doing a lot of national military education every day, every week, 24/7. In all the media, in the open the barracks to demonstrate that how